Now, for real, the first time I ever got away from home, I mean, to try to make a living by myself, was me and the rambling teenage sage, Norman Ritchie, that I hung out with, and he was a ne'er-do-well and a wino, about my age. We went down to Moab, Utah. You ever been to Moab, Utah? Why? Kind of pretty, but it's a little overgrown these days. Back in those days, we were just emerging from the Second World War and sliding into the Cold War, you know, dullest foreign policy, and everybody was stockpiling nuclear arms at a furious and precipitous rate, and the whole world was kind of going to hell in a wheelbarrow. But everybody was down at Moab, Utah, prospecting for uranium. And the only consumer was the feds. It was buy all the uranium they could lay their hands on. And it wasn't regular prospectors like old sourdoughs. It was weekend prospectors with their Army surplus scintillators. And they'd go out there, and insurance salesmen, real estate brokers, and they'd go out there trying to hit the mother lode. I had read books about the gold rush in California, and I knew that there were people during the gold rush were selling eggs to those miners for $1 a piece. And they were the ones that got rich. It wasn't the prospectors that got rich. So I went and I bought up every Army surplus shelter half and beat up canteens and web equipment and loaded it in a pickup, and me and Norman took it down to Moab to sell it off to all these nerds that was out there prospecting. Well, these little towns sprang up all around, kind of overnight, like Sunshine and Enterprise and Chesler Park. They've all blown away now, but as part of the ritual of the life in those towns, Carney would work through these penny ante carnies. They'd set up a few rides on the edge of town and have a few side shows. And as part of what they did, they'd take an old livery and convert it into a wrestling ring with 4 posts and ropes, and then put posters all over town on telegraph poles with a picture of some big, giant, ugly fella in there with his face all hammered in and hair growing out of his shoulders like an American Legion Post bartender. And you've been to there, I know that. And it'd say, if you can stay in the ring with this guy, see, for 3 minutes, you will win $100. Of course, you had to put up $25 entry fee. That's how they made their money. So you knew the guy was some kind of tough. Well, Norman come to me. We were dead broke. He said he borrowed my last $25. And he went over and he signed me up. And he come back and he said, oh, we're going to have drinking money this weekend. Have $100 to drink off of. I said, how's that, Norm? He said, all you got to do is stay in the ring with that guy for 3 minutes. I said, Christ, Norm, that might be Man Mountain Dean, one of Joe Lewis's sparring partners out on his retirement plan. Hell, I'm liable to have to go to a chiropractor to get my whole body unbraided when he's through with me. Norman said, don't worry about it. He's wrestling up at Mighton. That's over top of Indian Canyon in the Uinta Basin. He said he's wrestling up there. We're going to go up and watch him wrestle, and then we're going to figure out a surefire way to beat him, and we got a week to do it. So we went up there and watched him wrestle, and he was good. He had won 227 consecutive fights without losing one of them. The reason why he had won 227 consecutive fights without losing one of them was that he had mastered, and nobody knew how to break, the dreaded Moscow hold. Well, you could imagine my fear and trepidation. Christ, I took home movies, slowed them down, played them backwards. I couldn't figure out that hold. It was too damn fast. I hired a trainer. My training regimen consisted of drying out for 3 or 4 days. I was standing down there at ringside prior to the fight. My trainer was rubbing my entire body with Wesson oil. That was our strategy, like a watermelon seed. My trainer says to me, Phillips, all I can tell you is to keep away from him. Hell, I knew that. I got into the ring and I started a chogi around that ring. That's Korean for run. We did a lot of that there. And I knew this guy was about 30 years older than me. I wanted to get him to chase me, get him rubber leg, short of breath, and then I was going to wheel about and make my move, throw on a flying Beal, maybe a standing Hackenschmidt, one of those holds I learned watching Baron Michel Leone and Argentine Roca on the television years ago. You remember those guys, yeah. Well, I hear him start to pant and wheeze behind me. I turned around and made my move. A blinding, searing flash of pain thundered through my body. I catapulted through the air and fell totally recumbent and supine upon the canvas. My body racked with pain, and I knew that I was in the grip of the dreaded Moscow hold. The referee counted. 1, 2. My plight was desperate. I opened my pain-racked eyes, far as I could, about that far. And I looked up, and dangling in front of my nose, big pair of balls hanging there. Well, what would you do? I was desperate. I craned my neck, and I opened my mouth, and I give them balls a vicious chomp. Arr! That wrestler took off like a skyrocket, like an Araby, 40 feet in the air, hurtled down to the canvas. I hauled my limp form over his limp form. The referee counted 1, 2, 3. He was out, and I had won. Now I should tell you that later on at the party, we drank up that $100 with a reasonable degree of alacrity. My trainer came up to me and said, that was a hell of a fight. I was inclined to agree. He said, how was it that in your moment of direst need, you were able to figure out how to break the dreaded Moscow hold? I said, well, you'd be surprised how much energy you can get out of biting yourself on the balls. Believe me.